Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to be building a Bootstrap 5 website for a fake boot camp. Now, this is a crash course. We're going to talk about, how to set up Bootstrap and all of the, well, not all of them, but most of the common classes that you'll be using as far as, navbars and cards, the grid, flex, and all that. But I wanted to do it in a way where I'm actually building something rather than just doing like a video version of the documentation. So this is what we'll build. We'll go ahead and add a navbar at the top. We'll have some smooth scrolling. We have this showcase area with the image. We'll be using Flexbox for this, or I should say the Flex classes that Bootstrap offers. Same thing with the newsletter. Then we're going to look at CSS Grid and the Bootstrap Grid system, which we'll use to do this here. These boxes, we're going to use some Bootstrap Icons. We have these images and content here. And then we're going to be using the Accordion as well for frequently asked questions. We have some instructor cards. We have at the bottom here the contact info, and we're also going to add a map using Mapbox, and then a footer. And we also have a modal. If we click on start the enrollment, that'll open up a modal. And it is completely responsive. So if we make this a little smaller here, you can see still looks good. We're going to make everything stack on small screens. We have our hamburger menu. All right, so that's what we'll be building. Now, this video is sponsored by Hostinger, and we're going to, at the end of this, deploy to a shared hosting account, and we're going to do that by first pushing to GitHub and then taking that GitHub repository and using it to deploy to Hostinger, which offers really, really cheap and reliable hosting. So definitely check them out. Hosting of all types. You have shared cloud hosting, WordPress, virtual private servers, and more. And I will have a link in the description for 10% off, so definitely check them out. All right, so that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I have the Bootstrap 5 documentation open, and we might reference this throughout the project for certain classes and components. So if you've never used Bootstrap before, or maybe you've never used any CSS framework, basically we have a set of predefined classes to create specific elements, and the documentation will give you some good examples of that. So for instance, if we go to components and we look at, let's say, buttons, it'll show us an example and it'll give us the specific classes. So we have BTN as kind of a foundation class for buttons, and then additional classes like primary, secondary, success for these different colors. You also have like the outline style here. So you have these classes. You have classes for sizes, so BTN LG, BTN SM for small. So you can find pretty much everything you want as far as components. And if we look up here, you have forms, classes for forms, and layout like the grid system. But we're going to go over all this in this project. Now, some of these, like the Accordion, this is dynamic. You can see it does have some click events. So this needs the Bootstrap JavaScript bundle for the Accordion and modals and popovers and things like that. All right, so first thing we're going to do here is just make it so we can use Bootstrap, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. We're going to go with the quick and easy way, which is using the CDN. So basically we just need to include this link tag with the default Bootstrap CSS file, and then we also want to include the JavaScript bundle for things like modals and accordions. Now, the downside to using the CDN is you can't customize the Bootstrap CSS. If you want to be able to do that, which you probably will at some point, you're going to want to download the source files. So if you go here to download, you don't want the compiled CSS, you want the source files, because that gives you all the Bootstrap Sass files. Sass is a CSS preprocessor or precompiler that basically allows you to edit the Bootstrap variables, like let's say the primary color, the secondary color, the font size of the buttons. If you want that stuff to change and you want to customize it, you'll have to edit the Sass files and then compile it with a Sass compiler. Now that goes beyond the scope of this project, because this project I mainly want to focus on the Bootstrap classes and how to lay out a website with it. I'll probably do another video on customizing it with Sass and setting up tooling and all that. All right, so we're just going to use the CDN. So let's jump over to the text editor. I'm using VS Code, and I have some things here already. I have an empty index.html, an empty style.css. Now, we're not going to be writing a bunch of custom styles. There's just a couple things I want to add here later on. And then I have this IMG folder, this image folder with some SVG images, which are this one here, the showcase, this fundamentals image, and this this React image. And these are all from undraw.co. They have some really cool illustrations. And it's all free. It's all stock images. So let's start off in our HTML file here. We'll close the sidebar up, and we're just going to create a boilerplate with Emmet, so exclamation enter. And for the title here, we'll say front end bootcamp. And then we're going to want to include Bootstrap, include the CDN. So right here, I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to put it right above the title. And then right below that, I'm just going to add a link to the custom style sheet we have, which is just style.css. And then we also want the JavaScript bundle right here. So we're going to copy that. And the great thing about Bootstrap 5 is there's no need to, you don't have to include jQuery as a dependency anymore. Prior to version 5, you had to use jQuery, and I think that that's something a lot of us have been waiting for, is to scrap that. So in here, I'm just going to say hello and save, and I want to open this up. So you can either just open the index.html, or you can use an extension if you're using VS Code called Live Server, which is what I'm going to use. And this will just basically open it on a development server. All right, so we can do that by just right-clicking and saying Open with Live Server. And we should see hello, and you shouldn't see any margin or anything here. The font's changed, so we know that Bootstrap is being used. So we're going to kind of just start top to bottom. Let me move this tab to the first. And then this here, we're going to start off with the Navbar, which of course is very important for any website. And then we'll just kind of go down. All right, so for the Navbar, let's go over here and let's get rid of this hello. And we're going to use an HTML5 nav tag with the class of Navbar. And then we want to do navbar-expand. And this is basically so we can make it responsive. We could do any size we want here, small, medium. I'm going to do large. And what that means is when it hits the large breakpoint at a certain screen size, then the navbar will expand to show all the links. Anything under the large is going to be just a hamburger menu. So let me just show you here. So this is past the large breakpoint. When I hit the large, which is right here, you can see it changes. I could set this to like MD for medium, and then it would keep these links shown up until medium, which is I think right here. And then you could even do small, which is right here. Okay, and if you want to see the exact number of pixels for the breakpoints, you can go to, layout breakpoints. So for large, it's going to be anything above 992 pixels. Medium is 768, small is 576, none is anything under 576. All right, so we want to expand on large, and then for the color of the navbar, I'm going to do a BG-dark. So you have these BG classes as well. You have dark, light, which is like a light gray. You have primary, secondary, all those colors, and you can actually see those if you go to, where is it? Customize color. So you can use any of these primary, secondary, success, danger, and you're going to have these colors by default. But like I said earlier, if you want to use Sass, you can change the values of those. But we're going to go with dark, and then I'm going to do navbar dark, which will actually make the text light since the navbar is dark. All right, so let's just go with that for now. And if we just save that as it is, we should just see this dark line at the top. There's nothing actually in the navbar. So let's go inside here, and let's add the logo or the branding. So I'm going to put in a tag here. I'm going to give it a class of navbar-brand. And just put a number sign in here, and let's say front end bootcamp. So if we save that, we should now see the brand or the logo. Now see how it's right up against the edge here? We could add like a padding class, but I don't want it to just extend way over like that if we make this real wide. So I'm going to actually put a container in here. A container will do just that. It'll contain it into a certain space in the middle. So I'm going to add a class of container right here, and then I'm going to move the a tag here inside of the container. So now you can see we have some space on the side here, and everything will be contained, inside here, and it'll end like right here. All right, so now that we have the brand, let's do the menu next. So under the A tags, make sure you're still within the container. Everything is going to go within the navbar container. We're going to have a div with the class of collapse and also navbar dash collapse, because we want this to be able to collapse on smaller screens so that we have, you know, this right here. And on larger screens, it'll show the links. So inside this div, let's go ahead and add our UL, and this needs a class of navbar-nav, because that's what it is. It's the navbar navigation. And inside here, we'll have our list item. Each list item needs a class of nav-item. And then each link inside the list item needs a class of nav-link. And we're going to have this go to $learn. And in here we'll say let's say what you'll learn. And then let's copy, let's just grab this list item, and we're going to have 3 of these. The second one here is going to go to questions, or $questions, and we'll just get rid of this text here and say questions. And then this one is going to be instructors. Get rid of this text. Oops, we'll change that to instructors. All right, so I'm going to save that, and if we take a look, this is kind of the default layout. It's going to be right next to the branding. Now what I want to do is push the links over to the side here, or push the menu to the side. So in the UL, we can add a class of MS, so margin start dash auto, and that will align it to the right. Now if we go past the large breakpoint, you'll notice it disappears, and that's because of our navbar expand LG. We could change that to like SM, and then it won't disappear until we get to the SM, but I'm going to keep that at LG. All right, now we want to be able to have a button. I'm going to make this a little smaller. We want to be able to have that hamburger menu button. So what we'll do is go in between the brand, the link, and the div, the collapse div, and we're going to add a button. We're going to give this a class of navbar-toggler, and let's give it a type of button. And then we need to add a couple extra attributes here. One is going to be data bs-toggle, and basically we just want to say we want this to be collapse. We want the toggle to collapse, and then we need to target a specific item to toggle. So we need data-bs-target, and we're going to set that to some kind of ID, which I'll just do navbar. So $navbar, and then we just want to put that ID onto this div with the collapse. So ID equals, well, let's do nav menu. I don't want to use navbar, so we'll change this to nav menu. All right, now we need to put something in the button because there's no text in here or anything, and we can add a hamburger icon with a span tag, and we just want to add on to that navbar-toggler-icon. If I save that, now we're going to see this menu, and if I click it, it's going to toggle this div right here because it's targeting nav menu, and this has an ID of nav menu. So now we have a responsive navigation without really having to do much work at all, aside from assigning some classes and some attributes, HTML attributes. We didn't have to write any CSS or JavaScript or anything like that. All right, so that's pretty much it for the navbar. Pretty simple. Now we're going to move on to the showcase area, which is this right here, this part here, and we're going to use a little bit of Flexbox, and we're going to look at some padding and text classes. So let's go, actually I'm just going to comment this stuff just to make it a little neater. So we have our navbar, then underneath that we're going to do our showcase. All right, so we're going to start off here. I'm going to use a section. I like to break my pages up into different sections. We're going to have a few classes on here. One is going to be bg-dark because I want it to have a dark background. I'm also going to do text-light to make the text light. And then I want to have basically padding all the way around. Now with margin and padding, you have specific classes, like you can do, let's say PT-1 through 5, and that's padding top. And 1 is a certain amount of pixels, and then 2 is more, 3 is more, and then 5 I think is the highest. So you can do padding top, you can do padding bottom, whatever, 5. And then you can also do PX, which is going to be padding on the X-axis, so basically the left and right. You could do that. You could also do the Y-axis, which is the top and bottom, or if you want it all the way around, you can just do P-5, which is what I'm going to do here. Now, I also want to center the text, so I'm going to use text-center here. And I want to align, actually, we'll just go with that for now. And then inside here, we want to use a container, because if we look at the final project, this is, you see this space right here? We don't want this content to go up against the edge, so we want to put it in a container. Basically, all of this stuff will be in a container. You don't want the section in a container though, because that's the dark background. You want that to extend all the way. So let's add a container. And then inside here, we're going to be using Flexbox. Actually, if we save that, yeah, so if we save that, we just see the dark background here. But inside here, we're going to have 2 flex items. So let's just put a div here for now. Trying to think of the best way to kind of teach this. So this is going to be our flex box, and then we're going to have 2 items inside here, a div with all of this stuff, and then the image. Okay, so 2 flex items inside of the flex box. So we'll have a div, and then under that we'll have an image, and we might as well just add the stuff we need here. So source is going to be image/showcase. And then in the div, let's see, so in the div, we're going to have an H1, and let's say become a web developer. And we'll just see what that looks like so far. So right now, it's just an H1 and then an image, right, with some divs. Now I want to align these side by side, so I want it to be in a flex row. So this div right here that contains these 2 items, the div and the image, I'm going to add class onto this. And to use Flexbox, we can do d-flex. If I save that right away, it's going to turn it into a row. It's going to align them side by side. Now, with images, even without Bootstrap or you know, without adding any kind of CSS, your image will break out of its container. So I'm going to add onto image class, and I want this to be bound into the container, so we can use a class called image fluid, okay, which now is in the container. I want it to be smaller as well, so we can use a size class. Basically, we have width and height classes. I'm going to do W-50, which will make it half the size, or 50% of the size. Okay, and then, yeah, so that's starting to look good. Now, I don't want Flexbox to be enabled on really small screens, on, well, let's say mobile screens. So what I'm going to do is here, instead of just doing dflex, which means, you know, use flex on all sizes, you can actually add breakpoint or breakpoint size classes in here, like SM. So what this will do, if I do d-sm flex, I'll save that. You can see now it's not displayed as flex until it hits the SM breakpoint, which is right here. Okay, so basically on mobile screens, it's going to be still up and down. It's not going to be a flex row. But once it gets past that, then it's going to be a row. All right, so let's figure out what other stuff we need to do here. We might as well add the rest of the content over here. One thing I do want to do is this become a web developer. I want to have the web developer be a separate color. So I'm going to use a text color class. So let's add a span tag here. So I'm going to do span with the class of text, and I'm going to do dash warning, which by default is a yellow color. And then we want to put that, the text of web developer, we want to put that inside of the span. So now if I save that, we take a look, now you can see that's a different color. Now underneath the H1, we'll have a paragraph, And inside that, I'm just going to grab the text, so I don't have to type all that out. And I mean, you can put whatever text you want in here, but if we save that, that's what it's going to look like. Now I want it to be a little bigger, so we have a class called lead that we can use. If I save that, you'll see now the text is a little bigger. And then I just want it to add a button underneath that. So let's see, we have this paragraph. Underneath that, I'm going to have a button. Ultimately, this is going to open up our modal, but we're not going to do that just yet. I just want to get the button. So let's do BTN. I'm going to do BTN-primary, which will make it that blue color by default. And then I'm going to do BTN LG to make it a little bigger than the default. Okay, and then we'll do the modal attributes later on, but let's just put in start the enrollment. Okay, so if I save that, now we have a button. Now I want a little bit of space above and below the paragraph, so I can add a margin class. Remember, we can do M, and then I'm going to do Y, which is the Y-axis, top and bottom. So let's do MY-4 and save, and now we have a little bit more space. Now I do want the text centered on small screens like this, but I want it to be aligned on the right, or I should say at the start, on anything that's bigger than a mobile screen. So I have text center here, which will by default make it text center, but then I can also do text dash SM, so small, on small screens and up. I want to align it to start. Okay, and you can use text start as well, but this is just saying starting at the small breakpoint, then align it to the start. Okay, and you can see on very small screens, mobile screens, it'll be centered, and then anything above that, it's going to be start, or to the left. I think I said right earlier, but it's left aligned, start. End would be the right. All right, so now let's see. On very small screens, I don't even want to show the image. So what we can do is go down to the image, which is right here. We're going to add on to this. I'm going to add D-none. So D is just display. This is just setting it to display none. Now this is going to not show at all, but what I want it to do is show on anything bigger than the small breakpoint. So we can do D. So D-block is display block, but I want it on small and up. So DSM block. Now if I make this a little bigger, then the image shows up. All right, so we're making this nice and responsive, just pretty much as we go. So let's see, we want this to be aligned this way, like in the middle. So with Flexbox, you can use, with your CSS, you can use align items and justify content to align on the horizontal and the vertical axis. So right here we have our Flexbox. We're going to say align dash items dash center, and we also want to justify content. And justify content is going to be this way, and I want it to be between. So let's do justify dash content dash between. So we'll save that, and now you can see, I mean, there wasn't any space here to begin with, but if there were, it would be justified in between here, but the align items actually made it center this way. So now that looks pretty good. All right, and I think that's all we need to do for the showcase. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I had a little bit of padding on the navbar here. We don't really need to do that, but I guess it looks better with a little more space. So let's go back up here to, let's see, the nav tag, and I'm going to add a class of PY, so just padding on the y-axis of 3. And that just gives it a little bit more padding. And you can mess around with it and, you know, see exactly what you like. So that's the showcase. So now the next area we have is this newsletter area. So we just want, like, I think this is an H3 or something, or an H2. And then we have this input form here, and it kind of has the button integrated with it. It's an input group. So let's go under the showcase section, and let's say newsletter, and this is also going to be a section. I want that blue background, so I'm going to use BG primary, and let's do text light because it's going to be dark by default. and let's do P-5 padding. Actually, let me just see something real quick as far as the padding goes. Yeah, I guess the showcase padding is fine. All right, so in here, again, we're going to want a container to contain everything within that blue background, the section. And we're going to use Flexbox here as well. We are also going to use, I'm going to show you how to do the grid system with the columns, but I also wanted to use Flexbox. You could use either, but I wanted to include both just so you know how to do it. But basically, we're going to have two items, you know, just like we did up here, side by side. So let's do that. We'll create a div here, and I'm going to give this div a class of d-mdflex because I don't want Flexbox to kick in until the medium breakpoint. And then let's do justify dash content dash between, and let's do align dash items dash center. Okay, so that's our Flexbox. Now inside here, we're going to want, first of all, the H3, and I'm going to give this a class of MB-3, that's margin bottom 3. But on medium screens, I don't want any margin bottom. So let's also add MB-MD for medium screens, and then 0. And then in here, we'll just say sign up for our newsletter. All right, so if we save that, that's what it's going to look like. Now, this shouldn't be so far over. Let's see. And I spelled container wrong. All right, that's better. Now, I also want, on larger screens, I want it to look like the laptop is kind of resting on here. So I want to get rid of this space. And the reason we have this space, we have it all the way around because we're using P5, so padding 5 all the way around. So what I'll do is go up to the showcase section, and right after P5, I'm going to say PLG, so padding on large screens 0. And if I save that, now you'll see that we don't have that space there, and your laptop's kind of resting on the bar. But now her head is kind of too close to the navigation, so I'm also going to add PT, padding top on large screens. We want that to be 5, which will push everything down. Okay, so mobile screen, and it's only on large screens that the laptop will look like that, just because, you know, there's a lot of text on this side here, and you can mess around with it if you want. But now let's continue on with the newsletter. So we have our H3. Now we want what's called an input group, which is like the input with the button kind of attached to it. So if we go to the documentation and we go to forms input group, gives you a bunch of examples. What I want is something like, where is it? Like this right here with the input and then the button, which is this second div here. So I'm just going to grab that and let's put that in here. So it's a class of input group. We don't need the MB, the margin bottom. And then, so if I just go ahead and save that, it's going to look pretty bad. So we need to do a couple things here. First of all, let's change the color of the button. So instead of outline secondary, I'm going to do BG dark. Okay, so that'll change the button. I'm also going to add BTN-LG, which will make the button larger. It'll also make the input larger because it's an input group. And then let's change this stuff here, like the placeholder. That's going to be enter email. And then these right here, since I copied this from the documentation, it's going to include the accessibility ARIA attributes, so label, described by. And it is good to have these because it makes your website more accessible to people that are, you know, hearing impaired, vision impaired. But I'm not going to go over that stuff in this video. I might do a separate video on accessibility, but just for now, we're going to get rid of those. And then down here, let's see, we don't need the ID on the button. If we save that, this looks okay. It's just too wide. Now there isn't a class we can use, as far as I know, to make the input group shorter, or, you know, a shorter width. So this is where we're going to use a little bit of custom styling. So I'm going to add onto the input group. We'll call this news-input, and then we're going to go into our custom style sheet. And basically what I want to say is on medium screens, so right here and up, I want this to be half the size. Okay, so this is kind of split in the middle. On under medium, which is here and less, that looks pretty good. So we don't really need to do anything there. So we do need to use a media query in our CSS because we only want this to be in effect. Let's say min width, and remember the breakpoint for medium is 768. So we're going to say as long as it's over 768 by saying the minimum width 768, then we're going to take our news input, which is our custom class, and we're going to say give it a width of 50%. So now if I save that, so now you can see that that is now takes up half the space, which looks much better on bigger screens. Smaller is fine if it takes up 100% because it's stacked. Okay, so that's the newsletter section. Now let's move on to right here, these three boxes, and this is where we're going to get into the Bootstrap grid. Okay, and under the hood, it uses CSS grid. So let's create actually I'll put a comment here. I'll just call this boxes, and let's go ahead and create let's do a section. We'll do P-5, so padding 5 all the way around. Container, make sure I spell it right this time. And then to use the grid, we just need to use the class of row. Okay, so row is going to surround our columns. And we basically just want 3 even columns, which is pretty easy to do. We can use the class of col, and I could just put whatever in here for now. And let's say we want 3 even columns. I'll save that, and now we have 3 even columns. And it doesn't look like it just because this is aligned to the start, but if we do like text-center, now you can see that now they're aligned into the center. So what we want in these columns, and actually one more thing, if we just use col, it's going to be 3 columns even on really small screens, which we don't want. We want this to stack on mobile screens, meaning we want it to go, we don't want it to be in columns. So we can just add on to this. We'll say col-md, which means that it'll add the columns on medium screens and up. So now if I save that, now you'll see it stacks on small screens. Once we hit the MD, then it goes into the columns. So we're going to use col-md. Now inside these columns, we want to have cards, which if you go to components, cards, you can see different examples. So something like this with an image and a button, just a very simple card. A card with a title. So there's different examples here. We're just going to type it out because it's not too bad. So in this first one here, in this first column, we're going to have a wrapper class of card, and then as far as the background, I'm going to do bg-dark because you can make the card whatever you want, whatever color, and then let's do text-light. Now I actually want to have an icon in here. Let's close that up. I want to have an icon, and you could use Font Awesome or something, but Bootstrap now has its own icons. It used to back in the day, I think it was Bootstrap 3. They had icons, but then they got rid of them for a while, but now they're back, so we're going to go ahead and use that. And I'm not sure, let me see if we go to CDN.js. I just want to get the Bootstrap Icons CDN. I don't know if it's here. No, it's not. All right, so let's just search for Bootstrap Icons. So it's icons.getBootstrap. And this gives us the examples. We could install with npm, but I don't want to do that in this video. I know there's a CDN. I used it. Let's see. All right, let's search for Bootstrap Icons CDN. Does blog have it? Yeah, here we go. So we're going to want to include, what's this? Bootstrap Icons. All right, so we're going to grab this link right here, and that should allow us to use the icons. So let's put this right below the Bootstrap link, and we should be able to use those. So let's go back down, to, where were we, right here inside of our card. And this is where I want to use an icon. So I'm going to just add here an I tag with a class. And it's similar to how Font Awesome works. Instead of FS, we use BI, so Bootstrap Icons. And then whatever the icon, I'm going to do BI-laptop, because I want to use a laptop icon. And let's see if that works. Yep, so you can see the little icon. Now I want this to be bigger than that. So what I'm going to do is actually wrap that in a div, and I want it to be the size of an H1. And in Bootstrap, if you don't want to use an actual H1 tag or an H2, H3, you can use that as a class. So we can have a div with the class of H1. And we can move this into here. And if we save it, now you can see that that's bigger. It's the size of an H1. I also want to just add margin bottom to this. So in addition to that, let's do MB-3. And then under that div that wraps the icon, we're going to have an H3, and we want to give this a class of card title. And let's say virtual. Okay, so we have our H3, and let's also do some margin bottom on this too. So MB3. And then under the H3, we'll have a paragraph with the class of card text. Okay, so we have card, card body, card title, card text. If you have an image, there's also card image. In here, let's just do lorem. I forget what I did, 15 maybe, or 10. Just want some dummy text in here. We'll try that. Let's see. No, I had a little more. I think it was 15. It doesn't really matter. I just want it to look as similar to the original. Yeah. And then let's see, we're going to have a link underneath the paragraph, a read more link that's formatted as a button. So you can add these button classes on links as well. We'll do btn dark. And this will just go nowhere. And then in here, let's say read more. Is that what I did? No, that's primary. We actually want that to be primary. And I mean, you can use whatever colors you'd like, but I think that looks pretty good. So we want two more of these. So what I'm going to do is grab, so we already have the call MDs. Let's just grab everything within this call MD. So basically the card. And let's go to the second one, paste that in, and then we're going to change some things up here. Let's change the text to hybrid. We're going to change the icon from laptop to, let's say, person-square. And I also want to change the color. Let's do text, sorry, BG secondary, which by default is like a gray, dark gray. And then for the link here, let's do BTN dark. Okay, so we'll check that out. Good. And then the last one is going to be, the same style as the first one. We already have that in the clipboard, so I'm going to go right down here and paste that in. And then let's change virtual to in person. Let's change the icon to BI-people. There we go. Okay, so this is coming along. The next thing we want is basically these two. So learn the fundamentals, learn React with these images. And we're just going to use the grid here as well and just have two columns. Of course, you could use Flexbox if you wanted to. But let's go under this section here, and we'll just say learn sections. So let's do section and class of P-5. This one is going to be it's just going to have the light background, so I think that's just fine, just P5. And we also want to give this an ID because we want the navigation to take us down to here. So remember, the navigation we have pointing to an ID called learn. And then let's have our container, and then we'll do a row. And as far as alignment, I want to align items center. So I want to center it vertically, right? The text and all that. And then let's also do justify dash content. We'll do between the two items, Jesus, I can't type today. All right, so if we save that, we're not going to see anything just yet. Oh, one more thing, I just want to show you on very small screens, the columns. If you want to have space in between here, I'm just going to go right back up to the row we created in the boxes, which is right here. And I'm going to add G-4. So what that does is it gives it a gap, and it gives it a gap all the way around. You can also do GY for just gap this way and GX for just gap that way, but I want to do that just to separate them up a bit. So basically, I feel like Bootstrap 5 is getting closer to like Tailwind, where they give you these really low-level classes. But in addition to that, you have, cards and alerts and all that. So I'm really liking Bootstrap 5. I really like Tailwinds as well, but Bootstrap 5, you don't actually have to have as many classes, and there's already some pre-made styles. The downside is it can look a little bootstrappy, especially if you're not changing up the main colors and all that. Actually, yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. All right, so let's continue on. So we have our learn sections. We're going to put inside here. So this is our grid row. And then we want to have our 2 columns. So the first one, let's do call. We're just going to do call MD. And this is going to be an image. So the image is going to be an image/fundamentals. And we want to make sure we add a class of image fluid so it stays in its container. So fluid, and then underneath that div, we'll have another call-md. And I'm actually going to add padding on this, so P5, and this is going to be the content, which is going to be first in H2. We'll say learn the fundamentals, and then under the H2, let's do a paragraph with the class of lead, which will make it a little bigger. We'll do lorem 15, and then let's do another paragraph under that. We'll do lorem, let's say 30. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so you can see they're side by side. We have the text over here, and then I just want to have a button underneath, or a link formatted as a button. So under the paragraph, let's do A with BTN, and we'll do BTN-light here, and let's do a margin top just to push the button down a little bit, or the link down a little bit. And inside the A tag, I want a read more, and I'm also going to put a chevron icon right before it. So we'll do I.bi, and we want bi-chevron-right. All right, let's see what that looks like. Good. And it should stack, yeah, because we did call MD, not just call. So that looks pretty good. Now the next one is going to be similar, so I'm going to just grab this entire section, copy that, paste that here, and then let's change, or let's add BG dark to this section. And you can see how we're kind of piecing in all these sections. That's how I like to build websites like this. So we're going to do BG dark, and let's see what else we want to do. We're going to change the image here to the React. Now I actually want the image to go on the other side, so I'm going to grab this div, the call div with the image, cut that, and put it underneath this call div, which ends right here. So we'll place that there, and then let's change the text here to learn React, and I think that's it. Let's save that, see what that looks like. Okay, so the text, obviously we want that to show. So BG dark, let's also do text dash light. All right, I think that's, yeah, same thing. Cool. So those are pretty easy. Next thing we want to do is the questions, which is going to be this right here. We're going to use the accordion. So let's move on to that. We'll say question accordion, that how you spell accordion? No, it's an O. All right, so let's say section, and we're going to give this a class of P5, just like all the rest of our sections. But I'm also going to give it an ID for the menu, and I'll show you that in a second. So let's say questions. And I just want to save this and show you that if I click on the menu, if I click on this, this is going to go to learn, and notice how it goes down there nice and smoothly, which just happens by default because we used a specific class in our navbar, which was, where is it? We used it on the UL. No, we didn't. Wait a minute. Did we even add it? Maybe we don't even need to use that class. I thought we had a scroll class. I could have swore we added that. Maybe we didn't. Oh, I guess you don't need it. I thought you needed a specific class for that to happen, but I guess not. I guess it just happens by default, which is pretty cool. But one thing I do want to do is fix the navbar to the top, since we have this type of navigation, and that's really easy. All we have to do is add a specific class onto our navbar called fixed-top. So now the navbar will just stay there, and we can just kind of, navigate around. If we click on this, it'll bring us to the top. Now, one issue we have, see how it doesn't account for the space here? So her head is now under the navbar. So to fix that, I'm going to go into Style CSS, and I'm going to say body, and then I'm going to use the pseudo selector before, and let's say display block. Now, when you use before or after, you have to add the content. We don't actually want to put any content in there, so just empty. And then we're going to add a height of, let's say, 60 pixels. So basically, it'll add like a ghost element of 60 pixels so that it pushes it back down. All right, so I know that was kind of a detour, but let's go back down to where we left off. So boxes, learn sections, accordion. Now, this is going to be quite a bit of markup, so I'm trying to decide if I want to copy and paste some of this. No, we'll just type it out. It's not too bad, because we can just, once we have one question, we can just copy it, paste it, and just change the text. So let's add a container, and we're going to have a heading. So we're going to use H2. I want this to be centered, so text-center. And let's add margin bottom 4, and this is going to say frequently asked questions. Save that. Good. So we see the heading down here, and then underneath the H2, we're going to have our accordion. So we want to give this a class of accordion, and there's different types. We'll just go ahead and take a look at this. So we have like this style where it has the heading here, it has a border. I want to use the flush version, which looks like this. I think it looks a little cleaner. So we do want to use the accordion flush. Actually, I guess maybe we could just copy this. Let's see. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to grab this, and then we'll just kind of customize it. So right here under the H2, I'm going to paste that in, and if we save that, we should see an accordion. Okay, so that works. All right, so we're just going to change some of the content here. Let's go up to the first one. So we have this div here with accordion flush. This wraps everything. And for, let's see, the ID, instead of accordion flush example, I'm gonna Command D and select all of those, the accordion flush example, and just change that ID to questions, because it makes more sense, and it should still work fine. And then let's see, we want to go to the first item here. I guess we could put a comment. We'll just say item 1. So each div with the accordion item is a specific item. So this one here would be item 2, and I think we have, what, 3 total? item 3. No, there's another one. No, that's 3. No, there's only 3. All right, so let's go to item 1. And we're gonna keep accordion item, keep the header, we have the button. Again, I'm gonna get rid of the accessibility attributes just to avoid any confusion. So get rid of that. Get rid of these. You don't have to do this. I just want this to be, I want you guys to be able to understand everything here. All right, so back to item 1. And basically we have, we have the accordion item div, we have the header, and for the ID for the header here, I don't think we actually need this for what we're doing. So we can get rid of that. Maybe we should have just typed it out, but that's fine, whatever. Then we have the button here, accordion button collapsed. We want to leave that. The target though, the target has to match this right here. Okay, so we have the button and then we have the div, and these have to match. So let's change this. We'll change this to question-1, and then we also want to change the where is it? This right here, the ID. I want to change that to question-1. So that should still work. Okay, and then we'll change the text here. Let's say, where exactly are you located? And then for the content, or in the body here, I'm going to just get rid of this, and let's do lorem. We'll do lorem 50. Okay, so that's going to be the content down here. Now for the next item, you know what I'll do is I'll just copy the first item that I just put. So this ends here. So we're going to grab this. Wait, is that right? No. Sorry guys. I'm just grabbing the div with the accordion item class. And let's close that up. And then I'm going to just go to item 2, and I'm going to just replace all this. Actually, I'll just replace, yeah, so that's item 2. We'll paste that in, and then we have item 3, which ends right here. Let's paste that in. So now we should have 3 of the same questions. So let's go to item 2, and let's change the target. So this right here, we want to change that and that to 2, because this is question 2. And let's say, how much does it cost to attend? And we'll just leave the same body, that's fine. So item 3, let's say, what do I need to know? So like, what technologies, what skills do you need to know? And let's change question 1 here and here to question 3. So now we should have 3 separate questions that open separately, but I want to have a few more. So what I'll do, I think I still, my clipboard still has the first item. So I'm going to go under item 3. Let's say item 4. Oops. Paste that in, and let's see, we'll do how do I sign up? And let's change, so we have question 1 right here. Let's grab that and that. This is going to be 4. And then let's do, what was the other question I had? I think I had 5. Will you help me find a job? So let's go under item 4, which ends right here. Item 5. Do you help me find a job? And then just change the target from 1 to 5. All right, so now we should have 5 questions. Good. So that's the frequently asked questions section with the accordion. Now we want to do the instructors. So this is going to be similar to like the the cards we did above. So let's go under this entire section here, and let's give this an ID of instructors, so the menu goes to it, and then we'll give it a class of P-5 and also BG-primary, because we want it to have that blue background. And then inside there, let's do class of container, and then we'll have a heading. Let's do H2, text center, and text dash white, and we'll say our instructors. Okay, so we have our heading. Then we're going to have a paragraph underneath that. So underneath that, let's do paragraph. We'll say lead to make it a little bigger. We want a text center, and let's do text dash white, and I'm going to do margin bottom 5. And in here, let me just grab that text. Okay, so we have the paragraph. Now underneath that, we want to have our grid with our columns. So let's create a row, and we're going to do gap 4, or it's actually gutter. I say gap, but it actually is stands for gutter. And then let's do call. So call dash MD. What I want to do here is have it on medium screens. I want it to be split into 2 columns. So we're going to do -6, which might seem a little confusing if you haven't worked with the grid system, but basically there's 12 columns total, right? So we want this to take up half of the 12 columns. So we're using 6 on medium screens. On large screens, we want it to take up 3 of the 12 columns, so that we have 4 columns. So let's do call LG, not MG, LG. So on large screens, we want it to take up 3. Okay, and then in here, we're going to have a card, and we're going to use BG-light, which will give it a light gray background. And then let's do our card-body, and I'm also going to text center. Inside the body, we're going to have the image of the person. Now I'm going to use a specific API here, and you can basically just get random pictures of people. So it's going to be https randomuser.com, or I'm sorry, not com, .me /API/portfolio. Is it? No, not portfolio, portraits. So portraits / and then you can do men or women. This one will do men, and then just a number. So 11 JPEG. Okay, and then let's add some classes to this. So I want to make this a rounded image, so we can simply say rounded-circle, and let's do MB3. All right, so we'll save that, see how that looks so far. All right, so we have our guy in the circle here. And then underneath that image, let's do the name. So we'll put an H3, and this is going to be the card-title. And let's do MB3, and we'll say John Doe. And then paragraph with card-text. And we'll do lorem 15. And then we want some social media links for each of these instructors. So let's do an A tag here, and this would go to their page. I'm not going to put anything in here, but this will be let's do the Twitter one. So an icon, and we want class of BI, and then BI-Twitter. Now I also want this to be dark. It's going to be blue by default, but I want to use text-dark here. And let's do margin on the x-axis, so MX-1. All right, so if we save that, we take a look, you can see there's the Twitter icon. So now I'm going to copy this A tag down. Let's do 2, 3, 4. And the second one is going to be Facebook. And then let's do LinkedIn. And we'll do Instagram. Okay, so now we should see all of the icons here. Now I'm just going to copy the column. So column starts here, ends here. I'm going to grab that whole thing, And let's go underneath. We're going to have 4 total, so 2, 3, 4. And if I save that, it's just going to be all the same person. Now we're past a large breakpoint, so we have each one is taking up 3 of the 12 columns. When we hit the medium, it goes to 2. Okay, so it looks like that, and then it stacks on small screens. All right, so let's just change up the content. So what was the first one? Okay, so that's the first one, which I'll leave as John Doe. The second one here, let's change to Jane Doe, and then I'm just going to change, was the image right here, instead of men, I'll just change that to woman. And then let's see, this one here, the third one, let's change the name. We'll say Steve Smith, and we'll do men and then /12. And then the last one here, let's do woman 12. And for the name, we'll change that to Sarah Smith. All right, so we'll save that, and now we should have all different people. All right, cool. So next we just have basically this contact with the map here, and we're going to use Mapbox for this. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but you do need to just sign up and get an API key. And then we have the footer, and then we have the modal up here, you know, when we click Start Enrollment. So those are the things we have left. So let's go down under this last section, and we'll go ahead and create, let's just say contact and map, and then let's do section P5, so padding 5, and then let's add a container class, and then in here we're going to have a row with gutter 4, and we want 2 columns that start on the medium screen, so let's say call-md, and then in here we're going to put an H2 with some classes. I just want to text center it. This is the contact info heading, so we'll do that, and we'll do MV4, and let's say contact info. Now I wanted to include a list group somewhere, and so I mean it doesn't look the greatest, this here. If you want to change this up, you can, but I wanted to have a list group because you probably use these pretty often. Like if you have sidebars with, I don't know, if it's a blog with like category links or something like that. So let's do a UL, and we're going to add list dash group. And I want this to be flush, so we're going to use list dash group dash flush. And let's also make it a little bigger, so I'm going to use lead as well. And then inside of a list group, each LI is going to have a class of list group dash item. And in here, let's put a span, because I want the label to be bold. So there's a class, you can do FW for font weight and bold. And in here, we'll say main location. And then outside of the span, you can put, I don't know, I just put 50 Main Street, Boston, Mass. So if we take a look at that, there we go. And then I'll just paste these in because it's just like the phone and email and stuff. It's all formatted the same way. So we just have another list group item with the enrollment phone, the student phone, the enrollment email, and the student email. So if we save that, it's going to look like that. Now for the second item, or for the second column, I should say, let's go under this one, and let's say call-md. And this is where I want to put the map. So what we need to do is go to Mapbox. If you want to do this, you want to go to mapbox.com, sign up. I think I'm already logged in here. Okay, and then you just need to get an access token. So you can do create a token. Don't use mine, I'm going to refresh it afterwards. And then you need to include, if we go up here to web, let's say use the Mapbox CDN, and we want to grab, let's see, we have the CSS file, which I'm going to grab first, and I'm going to put that up at the top. We'll go right, let's go right above our custom style sheet and below the Bootstrap stuff. So that's the CSS, and then I'm going to grab the script tag here, And let's put that down at the bottom. So we'll put that right under the Bootstrap script tag, and then we want to open up our own script tag because we do have to add a little bit of JavaScript here. And let me see, does it actually give us, yeah, let's say next. So now we want to grab everything that's in this script tag and paste that in there, okay? And make sure you use your own key here. This is gonna, it'll automatically put your key inside there. And then, let's see, so we're creating a new map box. We have a container called map. So inside of the column here, we're going to have an ID of map. Oops, why didn't that work? I don't know why it's not working right now, but say div ID, and we're going to set that to map. And that's it. We don't need to put any other HTML in there. So you can add other values to, I'm just going to save this to align this correctly. So you can add other things inside of this instance, and we want to add a center point because we want to focus on a certain area. And this is going to take the longitude and then the latitude. So I'm just going to do -71.060982. And this is just a Boston location, but you can put whatever you'd like. And then 42.357.25. That's going to be where we want this centered. And then I'm going to set the zoom level, set that to 18. Okay, now if I save this and we go back, we're not going to see anything just yet because the div doesn't have a height or a width. So this is one more thing we have to do in our custom style sheet, is take that ID of map, give it a width of 100%, a height of 100%, and I'm also going to add a border radius of, let's say, 10 pixels. Okay, so now the map should show, and it should be centered on, you know, whatever latitude and longitude that you put in there. So the last thing we want to put, well, actually we want to do the footer, and then we want to do the modal. So for the footer, let's go right here, footer, and we're going to want to use a footer tag here. And let's do P-5 and BG-dark for our footer. And let's see, actually there's some other classes we want to do as well. So I'm going to add text white and text center. Now I'm also going to position this relative. So we can use position relative as a class. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to have a go back up button that I'm going to position absolute within the footer. So in here, let's use a container. And inside the container, we'll have a paragraph, give it a class of lead. Let's say copyright. And we'll just use ampersand copy. And let's say 2021 front end bootcamp. So if we look at this so far, okay, it's just going to look like that. And then I just want to add a go back up link with an icon. So under the paragraph, let's do an A tag and give it a class of position dash absolute. So it's positioned absolute within the relative footer. And let's give it a class of bottom dash 0 and end dash 0. You're a little restricted with the positioning. You can check it out in the documentation. And I'm going to do P5 for padding. This will just go to number sign, which will bring us up. And then for the icon, let's do I tag with a class of BI, and then a class of BI dash arrow dash up dash circle, and then also H1 just to make it bigger. So if we save that, it brings me back up, but you'll see that now we have this up arrow if we want to go back up to the top. All right, so the last thing we have to do is the modal. Let's just make sure this looks good on mobile. So everything should just be nice and stacked. Good. All right, so the modal, let's go back up to the button. So the button in the showcase, which is right here. So we have this button that says start enrollment, and we're just going to want to add on to this a couple things, a couple attributes. So after the class, let's put data dash BS dash modal, and I'm sorry, dash toggle. So remember with the navigation we did BS toggle, we set it to collapse. Well, now this is going to be set to modal, and then we need the target. So data dash BS dash target, and we're going to set that to # enroll. That's going to be the ID of the modal. All right. Now to use the modal, let's go to the documentation here. We have to add, I believe we have to add a little bit of JavaScript, or maybe we don't. No, I don't think we have to initialize it anymore. But let's go down to, because it's kind of a lot, so I think maybe we should just kind of copy and paste. So this will give us something like that. Is there one with a form? What's this? Okay, that's just showing you to use the grid. You can toggle between modals. I thought there was one with a form that we could kind of just use as a template, but I don't know. We'll just grab where is it? Live demo. Yeah, we'll just grab this. So the trigger we already have, right? We already have the button with the toggle and the target. So we're just going to grab this right here. Copy that, and then we can put this anywhere really. I like to put it at the bottom. So I'm going to go under the footer and paste this in. Now the ID is example modal. I want to change that to enroll. So I'm going to actually just Command D that, and change that to enroll. And now if we save that, we go back to this button here and click, it should open up the modal, which doesn't have anything in it just yet. But we know that that works. So now in the body, let's see, yeah, we'll just save it. We'll keep that. We'll keep the footer as is. In the body, we're just going to want to create a form. So I'm actually going to put, actually have a paragraph first. Let's do a class of lead, and we'll say fill out this form, and we will get back to you. Okay, and then underneath the paragraph, let's create our form. So we'll say form. It's not actually going to do anything, so we don't need an action. And inside here, let's have each label and input will be in a div with MB3, just to kind of push the next one down. So let's add a label. So we'll say label for first. We'll do first dash name, and we're going to give this a class of call dash form dash label, and label will just be first name. And then underneath that, we'll have an input with the class of form dash control, and let's give it an ID of first dash name, which matches the label. So if we save that and we take a look, we should have our first field. Now the rest of the fields I'm just going to paste in because it's pretty much the same thing. So underneath this div with the MB3, we're going to have 3 more. So the second one is going to be the last name, then we have email, then we have the phone. So now if I click that, we should see our form. And instead of save changes for the button, let's change that to submit. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And I think this, I mean, this looks decent. You can kind of tell it's Bootstrap mainly by the colors. This blue here is known for being Bootstrap, but you could easily, you know, use Sass and change the primary colors and change some other things and compile it and have a custom Bootstrap CSS file. But I think that it's nice that we have, you know, the smooth scrolling, we have a modal, we have an accordion, it's responsive, we have a hamburger menu, and we didn't really have to write any custom CSS or JavaScript to be able to do that, which is nice. So now what I'm going to do is deploy this to Hostinger, and we're going to get this up and running. All right, so we're going to be using Hostinger to deploy this website, and Hostinger is sponsoring this video. They're extremely cheap and reliable and great for just about any kind of hosting. We're using a shared hosting account, so I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Okay, so I already have an account here at traverseydemo.com. I just registered a new domain called frontendbootcampdemo.com, and that's the domain I want to use. And I have a premium shared hosting account here that's pending setup. So we'll go ahead and just quickly set that up. So we'll say start now. And obviously you would only do this part once you create an account. So I'm going to choose other for the type of website, and I'm going to choose the domain frontendbootcampdemo. And then from here, you can go on and you can use WordPress and set that up. They'll set that up for you, but I'm going to say skip. I will start from scratch and click on finish setup, and it should take us right to our panel. Okay, so that's all set. Let's say manage site, and this will take us to our control panel. Now there's multiple ways that you can deploy. So of course you can use like FTP if you want, SSH. We're going to use Git. So down here under advanced, we'll say click on Git, and we need to generate an SSH key. So I'm going to click on that, and let's copy that. And then we're going to go over to GitHub, and let's go to settings because we want to add that SSH key. So under SSH key or SSH and GPG keys, we're going to say new SSH key. I'm just going to call this Hostinger, and we'll paste that in and add it. And now we just want to create a new repository. So let's go to add new repository, and I'm going to call this Bootstrap. Let's call it Bootstrap Bootcamp website. Okay, and I'm going to keep it as public, and I'll have the repository just link in the description as well. So from here, let's go ahead and just copy this git remote add command, and then I'm going to go back into VS Code, and I'm just going to use my integrated terminal, so command or control tilde, and we want to first init or initialize a git repository. Once we do that, let's git add all. So we're adding it to the staging, everything to the staging area. Then we'll git commit -m, and we'll say initial commit. Okay, now I'm going to paste in that git remote add command that I copied, and let's go ahead and I'm just going to use the main branch. If you want to create a separate branch, you can, but we're going to say git branch -m main, and then we're going to push to that main branch. Okay, so once we do that and we reload this page, we should see our files. So now all we have to do is grab under code here. Since this is public, we're going to go to HTTPS and just copy that link, go back to this page, and let's go ahead and paste that in, and the branch is going to be main and create. We should see a little message that says it was added. Okay, git repository successfully stored. So now down here, you'll see your repositories, and all we have to do now is click on deploy. Are you sure you want to deploy? Yes. Okay, so deployment start, deployment end. Let's close that up. And now we should be able to go to the domain, and we can see the website has been deployed. All right, so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this little project, and I will see you next time.